Listen carefully because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you understand the end of relationships. Most guys get this wrong and it costs them months of unnecessary pain. When she walks out that door, everything feels backwards. She looks composed. She looks certain. She looks like someone who already closed this chapter while you're still stuck on the first page. That confidence in her step makes you believe she figured something out that you missed entirely. But here's what nobody tells you about that moment. Her certainty is borrowed time. It's not real clarity. It's emotional momentum carrying her forward before the weight of the decision catches up. Right now her mind is working overtime to protect itself. Every flaw in your relationship gets magnified. Every disappointment gets replayed on repeat. Every friend in her circle confirms what she wants to hear. The entire system around her is designed to make leaving feel like wisdom. She needs to believe this was right. Doubt feels like failure and nobody wants to sit with that discomfort. So her brain chooses conviction over questioning. It picks confidence over uncertainty. The story she tells herself right now has one purpose and one purpose only: making the exit feel justified. You weren't enough. She deserves better. Something greater waits ahead. These become the mantras she repeats until they feel like truth. And from where you're standing it looks permanent. It looks like she processed everything in fast forward while you're stuck in slow motion. You assume that because she seems untouched now she'll remain untouched forever. This is where most men make their critical error. They confuse her temporary composure with permanent indifference. They mistake her current conviction for lasting certainty. They believe the story she's selling herself is the story that will stand the test of time. But emotions don't operate on matching schedules. What she feels today has almost nothing to do with what she'll feel 6 months from now. The human mind doesn't work in straight lines. It circles back. It reconsiders. It replays moments with fresh eyes once the initial storm passes. That cold certainty you witnessed during the breakup has an expiration date she doesn't even know about yet. The walls she built to protect her decision will eventually develop cracks. The narrative that feels so solid right now will slowly start showing its weak points. You just can't see any of this yet because you're watching the opening scene and judging it like the finale. You're measuring her current reaction against what you imagine her permanent state will be. Time plays a longer game than either of you realize right now. And what happens next almost never matches what the first few weeks suggest. The real story doesn't begin at the breakup. It begins in the silence that follows. That quiet space where reality slowly replaces the noise of heated emotions. Something shifts after those first few weeks pass. The intensity starts fading. Those arguments that felt so massive begin shrinking in her memory. The frustrations that fueled her exit lose their sharp edges. Everything that seems so clear starts getting blurry around the corners. This is where time starts doing its real work. It strips away the noise layer by layer. During the relationship and especially during its ending, everything screamed for attention. Anger was loud. Pride was louder. Ego demanded the spotlight. But these voices exhaust themselves eventually. They cannot maintain that volume indefinitely. They grow tired and start whispering instead of shouting. And when they finally quiet down, something else emerges. Space opens up. Room for actual honesty appears. In this quieter phase, different memories begin surfacing. Not the explosive fights. Not the moments of disappointment. Something else entirely. The night you dropped everything to help her through a work crisis. How you instinctively knew what she needed without asking. The patience you demonstrated when she pushed every button you had. These aren't cinematic moments. They're ordinary instances of showing up consistently. She barely noticed them when they were happening. They were just part of the background noise of daily life together. But now in their absence they start carrying weight she never assigned them before. Her mind begins wandering into uncomfortable territory. Questions she blocked before start slipping through the cracks. Maybe he wasn't actually that bad. Maybe I pulled the trigger too fast. Maybe I confused something valuable for something ordinary. These thoughts don't announce themselves dramatically. They sneak in through side doors. Late nights when sleep won't come. Random afternoons when a song triggers something unexpected. Quiet mornings when she catches herself reaching for her phone to text you before remembering. They whisper at first. Easy enough to dismiss. but they keep returning with stubborn persistence. This stage remains invisible to you completely. It happens entirely inside her private world. While you assume she's thriving without a backward glance, she's actually beginning to reconstruct the past through different lenses. The version of events she needed during the breakup starts competing with the version that's forming now. And these two versions don't match up cleanly. She built a story to justify walking away. That story required you to be the problem. It required the relationship to be broken beyond repair. It required leaving to be the only logical choice. But time keeps presenting evidence that contradicts the narrative. And contradicting evidence is difficult to ignore forever. She thought freedom would feel like flying. Instead, it started feeling like floating with nothing to hold on to. The immediate aftermath delivers exactly what she expected. Liberation from negotiation. No more considering someone else's schedule. No more emotional labor of maintaining connection. Pure independence in its most intoxicating form. She makes decisions based solely on her own desires. Answers to nobody. The weight of partnership gets replaced with the lightness of singular existence. For weeks, possibly months, this feels absolutely right. She explores everything that felt restricted before. Conversations with new people. Experiences she put on hold. Parts of herself that got buried under relationship responsibilities. The world expands in front of her, and every new experience confirms her choice. But freedom has a way of revealing things you don't expect. It shows you what stability was quietly providing all along. When you extract someone who was woven into your daily existence, the gaps don't appear immediately. Early on, the absence feels refreshing. The space feels necessary. You finally have room to exist on your own terms. Then those same gaps start transforming. The texture changes. Moments when she used to have someone to call after an awful day. A person who already knew her complete history, so explanations weren't necessary. The comfort of someone who understood her particular brand of chaos without needing a manual. These things seemed insignificant while they existed. They become massive once they disappear. New faces enter her orbit. She gives them opportunities. Dates happen. Conversations unfold. Connections get tested. But something feels off in ways she struggles to identify. Everything requires so much setup. These people don't know her references. They don't understand what she actually means when she uses certain phrases. They can't read her moods from subtle shifts in tone. What felt effortless with you now demands constant explanation with everyone else. It's draining in unexpected ways. The thrill of novelty crashes into the reality of building from zero. Starting from zero means reconstructing every small intimacy that takes forever to develop naturally. That effortless understanding she took completely for granted turns out to be remarkably uncommon. Comparisons form without her permission. The mind cannot help itself. Someone new displays impatience and your calmness flashes through her memory. Someone new shows up inconsistently and your reliability suddenly seems exceptional. Someone new treats her casually and she remembers how you made her feel prioritized. She's not deliberately comparing. It happens automatically beneath conscious thought. Each new interaction gets measured against the standard you established. And most of these new people fall short in ways that surprise her. The excitement she felt about unlimited options begins revealing a hidden cost. Options mean nothing if none of them measure up to what she already had. The past always looks different when you're further down the road. Distance acts like a filter, removing the irrelevant and magnifying what actually mattered. Those petty arguments about whose turn it was to handle chores fade into nothing. The surface-level frustrations that felt relationship ending at the time lose their punch. What survives the filtering process are the patterns. The consistent behaviors that defined who you actually were together. This is when her perception of you starts shifting. She stops seeing you as the person who annoyed her during those final months. The complete picture comes into frame instead. Your entire time together viewed as one continuous story rather than isolated negative moments. When the full narrative appears, it's messier than the cleaned-up version she needed to believe while leaving. She starts remembering your effort. The sacrifices that seemed normal back then suddenly appear significant. How you showed up even when showing up was inconvenient. The loyalty you maintained when the relationship hit rough patches. The genuine investment you made in trying to build something lasting. During the relationship, these actions were baseline expectations. Just what people do in partnerships. But after experiencing others who don't do these things, they begin looking exceptional instead of ordinary. Rare instead of standard issue. This perception shift creates problems for her. It directly challenges the entire framework she built to justify her exit. If you weren't actually inadequate, then what does that say about her decision? If the problems were solvable but she chose not to solve them, then what did she actually sacrifice? Uncomfortable questions with uncomfortable implications. Her mind starts experiencing cognitive dissonance. The story she told herself doesn't align with the evidence appearing now. Something has to give. Either she admits the narrative was flawed or she doubles down on protecting it. Pride enters the conversation at exactly this moment. Pride tells her that reconsidering equals admitting failure. Looking backward means she can't handle moving forward. Questioning her choice makes her appear weak or confused. So even when regret begins forming, pride often locks it away in places nobody can access. Sometimes not even her. But those questions persist anyway. Quiet and relentless. Reshaping her internal understanding piece by piece. She catches herself wondering what would have happened if she'd communicated differently. If she'd been more patient during difficult conversations. If she'd valued consistency over excitement. If she'd recognized your worth while she still had easy access to it. These aren't loud dramatic revelations. They're subtle shifts happening below the surface. Small adjustments to how she frames the past that accumulate over time into something substantial. The version of events she's living with now doesn't quite match the version she started with. And that gap keeps widening. While she was busy moving on, you were busy becoming someone new. And she had no idea this transformation was happening until it was already complete. Here's what she didn't account for in her calculations. Pain is one of the most powerful forces for change that exists. When you got left behind sitting in that silence and absence, something inside you had no choice but to evolve. The comfortable patterns got shattered overnight. Easy routines vanished completely. You had to face parts of yourself and your life that you'd been skillfully avoiding for months or years. Maybe you channeled everything into your work with intensity you'd never accessed before. Maybe you finally took your health seriously. Maybe you stopped seeking validation from outside sources and started building actual self-respect from the ground up. Whatever form it took, the devastation became fuel. This process doesn't announce itself. You're not broadcasting updates or seeking applause. You're simply doing the daily work of improvement. One day at a time. One decision at a time. The version of yourself that existed during the relationship slowly dissolves. Someone stronger takes its place. The emotional dependency starts fading. The constant longing decreases week by week. Mental real estate that used to be occupied by thoughts of her gradually fills with different priorities. You're not trying to forget her or prove anything to anyone. You're redirecting your energy toward building a life that doesn't need her validation to feel worthwhile. This creates a fascinating reversal of the original power structure. The man who initially felt powerless and abandoned slowly becomes grounded and self-sufficient. The woman who initially felt liberated and certain slowly becomes uncertain and reflective. The emotional trajectories that started moving in opposite directions begin curving back toward each other in ways neither person planned. And here's the critical piece. This transformation makes you fundamentally different. You're not the same person she walked away from. Your priorities have evolved in significant ways. Your understanding of your own value has deepened considerably. Your willingness to tolerate situations that don't serve you has dropped to near zero. You've extracted lessons from the pain that fundamentally altered how you approach relationships and boundaries and self-worth. The breakup forced growth that comfort never could have produced. By the time she fully grasps what you've become, you're already miles beyond the version that used to wait hopefully for her attention. That realization hits differently than she expected. Because she assumed you'd remain emotionally frozen exactly where she left you. Available if she ever changed her mind. Still carrying the same feelings with the same intensity. The backup plan she didn't know she was keeping. But people don't stay frozen. You didn't wait. And that changes absolutely everything about the situation. The moment she understands what she lost is rarely the moment she can get it back. Regret has the worst timing imaginable. It doesn't show up when the door is still wide open and returning would be simple. It arrives later after distance has grown, after routines have completely changed, after you've moved forward in ways that can't be easily reversed. When she finally sees you clearly, not as the person who frustrated her but as who you actually were and who you've become, the entire landscape has shifted. The easy access she assumed would always exist has evaporated. The emotional availability you once had has been redirected elsewhere. The window closed so quietly she didn't even hear it. This recognition often happens through indirect channels. Maybe she spots you somewhere and notices something fundamentally different in how you carry yourself. Maybe mutual friends mention your progress casually in conversation. Maybe she sees something online that reveals you've evolved in substantial ways. However it reaches her, she suddenly realizes you're no longer stuck emotionally where she left you. That comfortable assumption she'd been carrying, that you'd always be there, always feel the same way, always be open to reconnection if she decided to come back, disappears instantly. And watching it disappear creates a shock she wasn't prepared for. She thought she could walk away, test other options, and keep you as insurance in the back of her mind. She thought the door would stay open indefinitely because your feelings seemed so intense. But feelings don't freeze in place. People don't pause their lives waiting. You certainly didn't. This is when the complete weight of her choice becomes undeniable. Not the simplified version she told herself during the breakup, but the full reality of what that decision actually cost her. She didn't just exit a flawed relationship. She left a person who genuinely valued her. Someone willing to invest real effort in building something meaningful. Someone who possessed qualities that are far rarer than she understood in the moment. The comparison between what she has now and what she had then becomes impossible to avoid. And if she's being honest with herself, the comparison doesn't favor her current situation. New people she's met don't demonstrate the same patience. They don't offer the same consistency. They don't make her feel the same level of priority. What she thought would be easy to find elsewhere turns out to be remarkably uncommon. But here's the brutal truth. Understanding doesn't automatically create solutions. Recognizing a mistake doesn't mean the opportunity to fix it still exists. Time transformed both of you completely. The relationship that existed lives in a moment that already passed. Recreating it isn't just difficult. It might be genuinely impossible now. The end of the story isn't the breakup. It's what both people become afterward. That's where the real truth lives. If there's one thing time reveals with absolute clarity, it's this. The person who appears to hold all the power during a breakup rarely holds it 6 months down the line. The emotional balance shifts in ways nobody can predict in the moment because both people are traveling through completely different internal journeys. She spent her time justifying the decision, exploring freedom, convincing herself she sacrificed nothing of value. You spent that identical time rebuilding, evolving, discovering strength you didn't know existed inside you. Those parallel paths create drastically different outcomes. The breakup that looked like her clean victory slowly reveals itself as something far more complicated. While she was protecting herself from doubt, you were becoming someone who no longer needs her to feel complete. While she was reinforcing the narrative that you weren't good enough, you were proving to yourself that you're more capable than you ever realized. This isn't about revenge or engineering her regret. It's simply what happens when someone stops obsessing over what they lost and starts focusing on what they can build. Growth doesn't require permission from the person who left. It just requires commitment to getting better. By the time the complete picture becomes visible to both of you, the power structure has totally inverted. She might recognize what she walked away from, but that recognition arrives too late to reclaim it easily. The door she assumed would remain open indefinitely has closed. Not from bitterness or spite, but because you've simply moved into a different chapter. And this delivers the final lesson. Relationships exist inside specific moments in time. When that moment passes, when both people transform, when life heads in new directions, recreating what once existed becomes exponentially harder. You can't step into the same river twice because both you and the river have changed. The man she left isn't the man you are now. The woman who left isn't who she is today. The relationship that existed lives exclusively in the past, and the past cannot be fully recovered, only remembered. So if you're sitting in the aftermath of a breakup wondering if she'll ever look back, understand this. She probably will eventually. But by the time she does, you'll likely be looking forward. And that's exactly how it should be. Because the greatest victory doesn't come from winning her back. It comes from becoming someone who no longer needs her back to feel whole. That's when you've truly won. Not over her but over the version of yourself that once felt destroyed by her leaving. Time teaches everyone eventually. The only question is who you'll be when the lesson finally lands. If this spoke to you, subscribe to Brainify Guy, where pain becomes perspective and heartbreak becomes strength.